My name's Amanda Perkins, and from Curlew Country, I've got the lucky slot of trying to keep you awake after lunch. Curlew Country is a small, independent organisation. It raises all its own funding. It's completely focused on curlew recovery, and it started off as one of 15 projects in a landscape partnership scheme, and that scheme had to have a defined area, and the area is because this is a hotspot of lowland curlew. There are only a handful of populations of curlews of this size left in lowland UK, and it's in Shropshire. It's considered to be lowland, but it is quite hilly with 3 river valleys, and you can see that it tips over the border into Montgomeryshire, into Wales, and of course curlews don't know the boundaries. Traditional sheep and beef farming area with some dairy, so traditional livestock, and this is one of our head-started curlew here, trying to lure those sheep away from a nest. Prior to the landscape partnership scheme starting up, a fantastic work by a local volunteer group, the Upper Onny Community Wildlife Group, had been done monitoring the adult curlew breeding population, and it had seen declines in line really with the national population decline. Into the landscape partnership scheme, the Curlew Recovery Project had been voted for, so people could vote for the projects that they wanted in a sort of diminishing list, and they could vote for as many projects as they wished. And the Curlew Recovery Project got nearly 98% of the votes, so you can tell how much people locally love our curlew. And it was designed for an incumbent project officer to go to farmers, to talk to them, and ask them to manage their habitat better, and to get them into agri-environment schemes. I happen to be the incumbent. I was a bit nervous about that because, of course, if the agri-environment schemes were working, we would have had a lot more curlew, and the farmers were pretty fed up by implication, getting the blame for curlew demise. They thought it was predators. I went back to the board and said, please, can we work with farmers in partnership, grassroots up, and work with them and monitor to find out what's really happening to our curlew population. The farmers had said, if you don't take predation seriously, if it's found to be a problem, we won't work with you. So we had to work sensitively with our stakeholder groups to achieve that. Did our monitoring reveal? So here are selfies, fox, badger, and rather extraordinarily a sheep for 2 years in 2015 and 2016, and this is the result of failure of those nests at egg stage. So over 50% predation by foxes, just under 25% by badgers, and the rest a range of causes. Totally. What else did we discover? Well, we discovered that whilst foraging was generally good then, even in the dry years, the birds needed to travel a long way to find enough wet foraging and roosting. So we put a GPS tag on a bird and found that that bird was travelling several kilometres to find wet foraging ground and roost at night. And actually also subsequently each year more grassland is drained, and so the foraging areas diminish. Years 2015 to 2016, only 3 nests each year got beyond egg to hatch stage. And in 2016, Andrew Hoodless had advised me from GWCT, had advised me about Natalie Busch from Nabu in Germany, who trialled individual fences around individual curlew nests. And we trialled fences in 2016, and they were the 3 nests that got beyond egg stage. This is a rather larger version of our trial here. We wanted to see how curlews reacted to the nest. We also found out that our curlews had these huge territories, not just nesting on the same in the same field each year, not even on the same farm or in the same management each year, but they were preferring silage, and they were not nesting in lovely species-rich grassland or even semi-agriculturally improved grassland. They were wanting something that was undisturbed by livestock and a sward height that they could hunker down into but see over the top of. We discovered that had the chicks not been predated or the nests not been disturbed at egg stage, then agricultural activity would come into play, and you can see this pair of curlew here who've been disturbed by rolling. Probably their nest has been at least damaged. And it might not have been rolling, it might be harrowing or fertilizing. And then, of course, later on, mowing comes into play for both eggs, but increasingly so in our area, but also the chicks. Just a little pie chart showing you that, again, over 50%, unfortunately, over 50% of curlews are nesting in silage and other improved grassland, not hay meadows, very few hay meadows remaining in our area, but a great group looking after them, but they're not choosing those traditional hay meadows to nest in. Mention public engagement and education, which is an important part of our work and which really got going in 2016, firstly with Curlew Country, which some of you may have seen. And 2016 was also the year that Mary Colwell did her walk across UK and Ireland, and we were able to launch a large arts project in association with that. We had mini choirs throughout our area, and a composition of music and lyrics, and we had writing workshops and sculpture workshops, and that all culminated in a final performance event, which was both uplifting but also a bit sad, knowing that at that stage that we weren't managing to do anything that was saving our curlews. So in 2017, we had worked out, we thought, what was happening, or we got a good idea of what was happening to the eggs, the nest at egg stage, but we needed to find out what was happening to the chicks. So we fenced as many nests as possible based on our trial fencing. We obtained a license to incubate the eggs and return them to the nest at pipping stage to promote hatching and discover the fate of those chicks. And in 3 trial areas, we had targeted predator, lethal fox control, so targeted predator management. And we also worked with a farm business manager to establish the true cost to farmers of supporting breeding curlew on their land. From one of those 3 trial areas, this is a juvenile that survived. That's the male in the front there, but we had predation control in this area. And we also had to leave about 4 hectares of crop unmown until that chick had fledged. Our conclusions. Well, actually, we were quite excited about our conclusions because Brexit had happened. We had a new 25-year environment plan in which this priority species had been name checked, and the agri-environment schemes were changing. We knew that we needed landscape scale. We knew we needed habitat creation and management, targeted strategic predator management, expertise to help and find monitor nests, facilitation and support for farmer clusters, and initial reward for farmers sacrificing crops. And we knew that also that curlews were going to produce multiple additional biodiversity and environmental benefits when managed more beneficially, and that farmers love the curlews. So we were quite positive, but we needed to take a sticking plaster measure that we hope that would do this. This is a head-started chick sighted on the Hale Estuary in March 2019. So this is actually a bird that had been raised in 2017. We didn't mean to rear chicks in 2017, but we had 6 eggs with no nests left to put those pipping eggs back into at that stage. All the nests have been predated, so we reared the chicks. And this is the result of one of those chicks. And then in 2019, 2 years later, it came back to make a breeding attempt 6 kilometres from where it was reared and 13 kilometres from where it was released at a migratory stopover roost. So our head starting is actually reinforcement. Unlike the translocation projects that you've heard earlier, we're trying to save our local population from dying out until the needed measures come into place. We started off in quite a rudimentary fashion. There'd been the flagship Project Gobwit, and WWT, who kindly gave us some advice, had done other head starting work, but we were using chicken incubators here and fairly rudimentary kit. We got 21 chicks away that year, and I think the curlews taught us as much as we looked after them. Just to whiz you through our methodology, our eggs are collected from first nest whenever possible, and we collect a full clutch of eggs. We choose nests that are likely to be disturbed by agricultural activity. You can see a pair of curlews with white rings around them here. They're predated so quickly, our nests, that we actually at that highly vulnerable to disturbance stage. So when the hens are laying, we do sometimes put up fences around nests, and we put dummy eggs into the nest sometimes until we've got a full clutch of eggs. And then the eggs are transported in a portable incubator to the incubation unit, but that's usually a maximum of 20 minutes away and often much closer. Talked about community involvement, but I haven't talked about our volunteers, who are absolutely essential to us. They come and help with all the cleaning and washing and all that repetitive, ongoing labour full work that we do for Headstarting. And these are some of our volunteers and funding stakeholders here. We've gathered at a safe distance to see our chicks being released, and you'll see that we just drop the side of the pen and all the protective fences and let them out into their environment. 2019 was a great year. The Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust kindly agreed to partner us. They are, of course, avicultural experts, but they hadn't head-started curlew before, so they worked with us, and they also did head-starting in the Severn Vale in the same year, and they arrived with lots of wonderful equipment and good avicultural skills and expertise, and we learnt a huge amount from them, and we hope the Curlew Country may have taught them a bit about curlew behaviour, in comparison to the rudimentary kit that I showed you in one of the previous slides. That lots of really upgraded kit came in with WWT, improved procedures and expertise, and we're very grateful to them. And they really, in particular, they really upgraded our egg to hatch rate. Talk a little bit about returning chicks. So over an 8-year span, we've head started for 6 years with 2 gaps, and we've released nearly or around 150 chicks. And here you can see one released in 2021, returning and confirmed breeding, returning first in 2023. Don't always supplementary feed, but this year we were, and it was spotted in Wiltshire this year in 2024, before returning in the pre-migratory flock to Shropshire. Our last head starting season, we saw this guy who was the longest to keep chicks from a natural nesting situation. He started off, here he is roosting in our pen in 2019, and he was one of 2 chicks that were reared and released in that year and seen overwintering on the Hale Estuary. And they've both returned to Shropshire and have had breeding attempts since 2021. 8 years, we've got a good span of time to work out what the impact of our heads, or to start to work out what the impact of head starting might be. So a minimum of 10% of head started chicks are returning, and we think tentatively that they are starting to stabilise that population. But the modelling also suggests that head starting alone within a dwindling population, even if upscaled, is not going to be enough to turn the situation around. So natural nest success is needed as well, and has to be part of the strategy, although within a low productivity population, such as intensive silage, head starting is probably also likely to be needed to boost that population growth until the other natural nesting interventions, which we know to be essential, take over. Quick run through. I'm aware that there was a lot of information quickly delivered in that, and I hope that there will be time at some stage to answer any questions that you have. But thank you very much for listening.